cloud, because this meeting will be seen by many. So let's start for today. Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be at the start of a new event series of Pitch Global. I have been the US CEO of a fund of fund, and my task was also to invest in, besides directly actually into some companies, also into big VC firms like IVP, which went on from there to invest into today's topic, AI. I had a pleasure to interact with many CVCs, and I have to say, one of the brightest ones, Deborah Magid, is here today. We interacted for 12 years, and we were
at least
12 years, and we were tasked together with the governor of California at the time to actually build a bridge between the Russian and the US ecosystem. And
in the days when you could do that.
In the days when that was a desired task. Absolutely.
That's right, it was desired.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be proud of what we accomplished at the time.
That's right.
Right. So the State Department, everybody was involved.
I traveled there with the State Department. It was a different time.
Bilateral exchange. So we have you today leading the new topics of AI that will be a continued series for every month. And you have over 20 years with IBM experience. You have seen many. You are also in depth with many AI topics, even from your IBM times. And it's such a great pleasure to be working today with you. And Deborah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much.
AI session.
So we're going to have a kind of a packed agenda. I just want to say, we're not going to describe generative AI for you, because if you're in the audience here, you probably already know what it is. I'll just say that we decided to double down on this topic from the point of view of what corporations and corporate venture arms are doing, because there's been so much investment in this already. Microsoft put their $10 billion into OpenAI. NVIDIA's venture arm has been very active, and the company's really taking advantage of what's going on in this space. So if you can create new content based on huge amounts of existing data, you get really interesting things out of it that are new. I had a friend on Facebook who created an iambic pentameter poem using ChatGPT. You can write your resume, you can do code, you can do all sorts of amazing things. And so we're going to look at that from a kind of a different angle today. I want to mention that we're going to have a similar program on August 9th, same time, same place. But on diving into a particular industry, we're going to look at the semiconductor industry. So if you have anything to do with semi and systems architecture and so forth, please join us on August 9th. We'll be posting and sending out the registration link today or tomorrow. So now we have a really amazing keynote from Gerard Cunningham, who is going to introduce himself and will say a few words about this topic from the point of view of McKinsey.
Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you all. It's a delight to be here. I got a few pages. I'm going to bang through them pretty fast and maybe have a minute or two to answer questions at the end. Like Deborah, I'm just going to assume you know what Gen AI is. I assume you don't want to talk about the AI apocalypse, and risks will be managed and looked after. What I was really focused on is opportunities, and where we can find amazing new opportunities to explore. So why don't I pop that into full screen? Can you all see my presentation okay?
Yes, it's perfectly visible.
Okay. So first of all, I'm a partner at McKinsey in the Silicon Valley Bay Area office. I'm part of our Gen AI Tech Council. We established this. Frankly, we were talking about it for the last couple of years. And then when we saw OpenAI announced ChatGPT, by the Sunday night, we were saying we need to really take action here. The revolution is now occurring. I am involved in corporate venture capital globally with our practice that serves corporate VCs, corporates wanting to start VCs, corporates running VCs, etc. And I joined the firm about 4 years ago after a career in AI and in corporate America, and with startups, thinking that it was time to reinvent myself in something new. And I started a climate tech practice here at McKinsey. It's now one of our biggest and fastest growing practices. It's one of the big themes for the next 20 or 30 years. But so is AI. And look, the reason Deborah and team asked me to join you is I've got some scars from being in the trenches of previous generations of AI with companies that have been successful, a couple of different unicorn businesses. I've been on the corporate side of the C-suite, implementing and running AI reinventions of these companies, and have seen previous digital revolutions. And I've got this math, computer science background. We are in the next revolution. And look, those of us in Silicon Valley, we've been wondering what the next one was for a while. We've all lived with AI for decades, but we've lived through the PC revolution that put a computer on every desktop, internet that gave us access to the globe, and then mobile that was a supercomputer in our pockets. This age of AI is here and is very, very clearly here today. But there's a lot of talk about it being driven by generative AI, which kind of ignores all the great other AI and deep learning activities that have gone on. But it's also based on accelerated computing. Each of these revolutions has involved enormous changes in software that have been enabled by fantastic new hardware breakthroughs. We've been imagining this day when it comes to AI for decades, but without the new, incredibly faster and ever increasing speed of the latest compute technology, we wouldn't be having this age of AI right now. So I just wanted to make sure this isn't only software, this is also hardware. And that has implications for all the industries that are going to be impacted. This is not just software to automate the creation of copy or making pretty new pictures. This is also about reinventing the industries that we're in. Let's just come back to Gen AI for a second. So McKinsey's done some research on this. We think there's a lot of work, 60 or 70% of work can be automated using generative AI. When we do that, we believe there's about $4.4 trillion of increased productivity coming from the use of generative AI in the enterprise. Quite an incredible impact on the global economy. And it's not in one sector, it's across the entire industry. Every sector is going to be touched by this. It's at different degrees depending on the actual industry, but dramatic productivity improvements. And this really could change the world. Over the last 20 years, we've seen declining productivity globally. And we are estimating that over the next 20 years, productivity could grow by 60%. So up to 3.3 increase of percentage increase in productivity per year for the next 20 years. That is just an incredible change if that comes true. So Gen AI bringing about amazing productivity increase. But this whole discussion is also predicated on accelerated computing. For those of us who have been keeping track, Moore's law has been beginning to fail us for the last decade. And not for any bad reason, just as we're getting generalized chips smaller and smaller, the performance improvements have been getting smaller and smaller. What we've now needed to transition over to is a new architecture, which is much more specialized compute with chips designed to do specialized things like graphics, data, tensor calculations. And the latest from NVIDIA, I pulled this out of the Conflict presentation that they gave just recently. They've been able to increase their throughput, their performance by 1 million times in 10 years, swamping progress under Moore's law on the general compute chips that is happening. We don't know if it's going to continue at the same rate, but if they're back on Moore's law, it's still going to be an incredible pace that we see over the coming years. And it's the combination of this new software and new hardware that actually gives us a new AI tech stack. I just want to say, this doesn't mean we're going to rip out all the old tech stacks that we have and replace them overnight. Again, those of us who've been around, we know that what actually happens is the new tech stack gets built up beside the old one, and old ones live for often many decades. But this new tech stack needs to be put into place either in corporations or on the cloud as we take advantage of all of the new opportunities from this age of AI. And this is different to what most corporations have today, and therefore is going to be quite a large transition on the back end, not just on the front end. So this age of AI, lots of productivity improvements, more, faster, cheaper. It's going to make things we already do better. It's going to be fantastic. But one of the things that I didn't talk about when I talk about productivity is the impact we'll have on innovation, that new business ideas are now enabled for the first time. We'll have new products, new industries. This is going to be threatening to incumbents and corporates. It also creates opportunities for them. To make this feel a little real, I asked my climate AI team to just kind of pull together a couple of ideas on where we saw new business ideas that would be climate impactful, i.e. reducing emissions, removing emissions, atmospheric carbon, responding to the crisis, or rewiring the world to account for carbon. And they throw up three of their favorite ideas from the new climate economy that we're building. One is our electricity grid right now is an incredible, much more complex beast than it was even 5 years ago, because we've now got this mix of base load, renewables, the peakers, and we've also got this incredible changing demand. We actually don't have a real-time adaptive grid management solution in place anywhere in the world right now. So there's an incredible opportunity for someone to come along, use this new technology, and build that real-time grid management. Environment, data centers, buildings. We have got a huge install base. The buildings account for north of 20 to 30% of emissions globally. And yet we are not doing a great job in managing these environments, even with all of the equipment, HVAC equipment that's out there. We now can create responsive learning environment management tools. Google has experimented with substantially. There's new companies spinning out of Google and other places to lean into, learn and respond in real time to the environment in which they're operating to maintain temperatures while minimizing emissions. We see in California and in other states, insurance companies are pulling out at a statewide level. So here in California, you now cannot get a new homeowner's insurance from State Farm. They're pulling out because they don't do forward-looking building level risk calculations, and therefore calculate your individual insurance premium based on your climate or personal risk. Those calculations can now be done. We can now forecast them. We will see some new insurance businesses pop up that are only able to do this because they can actually do the forward prediction in real time. We could go on and on. I just wanted to give three real solid examples of where we see significant opportunities for new businesses. If we ran through any vertical, any sector of the economy, we think there are brand new businesses that are now enabled in this age of AI. And this is a corporate threat. AI natives are on the attack. We've got these new companies they're pulling top talent from the best companies. So the 7 folks who wrote the Transformer papers for Google are now no longer working at Google. They're all at startups. So we now are pulling the best brains out of the incumbents in the technology industry. They're threatening the core. The first wave of comments around ChatGPT were Google is now, the search is under threat. They're coming back, but it's still not resolved. There's still some threat to their core business. We're seeing the iterating in real time, moving very fast, scaling quickly, generating enormous valuations, so that it's actually hard to imagine the biggest technology companies being able to buy companies like OpenAI or some of their competitors very, very soon. And if Google is under threat, how are the corporates going to compete? This is a real challenge for the corporate environment and for the incumbents outside of high tech as this age of AI comes rolling along. Look, the good news is corporates have got incredible assets that, as some of my colleagues say, startups would kill for. Some corporates have got amazing data, obviously got access to capital, fantastic brands that are well known, and distribution networks, supply chains and distribution networks that mean that they can get new products, services into the hands of existing customers. They can adapt their existing content or products or services. We've got amazing assets on the corporate side. So basically, if you're under threat and you've got amazing assets, you've got a set of choices to make. If you've got the opportunity because you have assets to leverage and you are under threat, you've got some choices. Do you wait? If you're under limited threat and you've got limited assets, you probably should wait until there are proven case studies on how to respond. There's no need to rush into something. You've got no assets and you're not being threatened directly. If you are being attacked, education, so Chegg, I'm sure a lot of you saw, their share price is down 50%. They are giving no guidance on future revenue in their calls because they have been so attacked by OpenAI in terms of their education solutions. They need to do something to reinvent themselves and protect that core base of users. If you've got incredible assets, you should be going on the attack, because if you don't, then your direct competitors will. You will run the risk of being put into that defend situation if you've got assets but are not actually deploying against them quickly and placing bets to accelerate your core growth. And then, of course, if you've got incredible threat and incredible assets, get on it, go all in. This is not a time to just, yes, you should go do some, a couple of use cases. Yes, you should go learn, but really the challenge for the corporate is to go all in and really be prepared to take market share while defending yourself from new attackers from this world. Now, having said all that, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Steve Jobs said it, Abraham Lincoln, I'm sure lots of other people, I've said it at times. I'm sure many of you have. And that is the beautiful thing about corporate venture capital. You have a role, those of you in it, to really play a role in play your part in creating the future. We asked, we went out and asked folks within the CVCs themselves, but also the senior executives who created the CVCs, what they were looking for, what they expected and hoped for from the corporate venture capital firms that they created. And as you can see, what they were looking for was impact on the company, market insight, revenue growth, building internal capabilities. They were less interested in fund returns. They want those because that means this is a self-funding exercise. But it's really about how does that corporate lean into new opportunities. And if you can do that, you get the Holy Grail, the strength of an incumbent coming together with the energy of a startup. And the question that that Deborah asked me was, is AI ready, Gen AI ready for corporates? I think the answer is absolutely yes. And what we now need is the corporates to get ready for AI. And just quickly in summary, productivity and innovation is where this is all about. This is a revolution, and the corporates are under threat with incredible assets and can lean in and help create the future. I'll just leave you with the last thought. Best defense is a great offense. Don't waste time. Get on this and move quickly as you can. Okay, with those thoughts, can I hand it back to Deborah to take us from there?
Absolutely.
Or Axel, sorry, Axel.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed this. And Deborah?
Thank you. Thank you. That was very helpful. We're going to move on to a panel, and I think we're going to echo some of the things that Gerard said about the industry, about the tech stack, and about corporate venture capital, CVC, of which many of us are part. I want to mention one more thing, because I mentioned August 9th and the industry events that we're going to have on semiconductors. We're going to talk about insurance in late September, food and agriculture in October, and climate tech in November. And we're going to have a big thank you, one more thank you, to San Jose State University, who's sponsoring this event and will sponsor the future ones as well. In fact, we're going to have a live in-person event at San Jose State, which has a gorgeous facility, on September 21st in the afternoon. So we'll have more about that posted later. So now we're going to have a lovely panel with some institutional investors and corporate investors and luminaries from the industry. So let me bring them on and make sure you unmute your mics, guys. So here's Tim Connors, founder of Pivot North. Hi, Tim. We have Jay Anda, who's a CVC with Marubeni Ventures, and he's going to have to explain what that is. It's a large Japanese firm that you guys probably do not know. So hi, Jay. And then we have Ben Haskell, who's with Lamb Capital and knows a lot about semiconductors. So we're going to have those guys back on the August 9th event. And we have Evangelist Samudi, so I've also known for many years, who is the founder of Synapse Partners. So can you guys all join, please? So the panel is going to ask the question again, is generative AI ready for the corporation, and is the corporation ready? And what's going on with the investment world? And we're going to do that by first introducing the panel briefly and saying a couple words about yourself. I will say a word about myself, which is that my degree many years ago, I won't say how many years, is in cognitive psychology. So I studied the brain and behavior. We were funding, in my first corporate job, we were funding AI research at MIT when I was working for AT&T. And so I've been tracking these spaces for a long time, and I feel kind of vindicated because it's becoming real now. So Evangelist, why don't you introduce yourself and say a couple words about yourself and about Synapse?
Thank you, and good morning to all, and thank you for including me in this event. So Synapse Partners is, I'm a managing partner of the firm. It's been around since 2016, and invest in early stage startups that develop enterprise software AI applications, horizontal and vertical. On the vertical side, we tend to focus on mobility. And we advise large corporations, a number of which are corporate partners of the firm, on the use of AI. And we've been doing that, as I said, for a number of years. I've been in various roles of AI since 1982. So I've seen a number of different springs that were followed by long winters. And I said, very happy to be here.
Thanks so much. Ben, would you say a couple words about yourself and about Lamb Capital?
Sure. I'm Ben Haskell. I'm a hardware guy by education. Have worked in semiconductor equipment for my entire career, but mostly in startup companies. At Lam Research, I've been in our CTO organization, engaged in startup companies on new technology development for the past 6 years, for the most part. I joined our Lam Capital corporate venture arm about 6 months ago. Over that time frame, we've invested in a number of companies in the generative design space, in machine learning for hardware design, in novel chip technology for AI accelerators, for example. So as far as large language models are concerned, we're more of a consumer of the technology, but we're very interested in novel generative AI technology for hardware design, for example, which is, I'd argue, a tougher nut to crack.
That's very true. So Tim Connors and I met in a previous life. He was at a different firm. I was at IBM, but he was at a different firm. Tim, can you talk about yourself and what you're doing at Pivot North?
Yeah, sure thing. So Tim Connors, been doing venture now for 25 years. Started at Sequoia Capital, then US Venture Partners, then the last 13 years have been my own firm. I do very early stage, frighteningly early, usually backing founders pre-traction and helping them, coaching them all the way through to IPO. Been a part of 6 unicorns now, which is a lot of fun. And then about 3 years ago, started a startup studio called Platform Studio. And we're helping a bunch of folks in the corporate world figure out how to do innovation well. So it's a joy to be included today.
And Tim's had some nice exits. In fact, IBM bought one of his companies, right?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great.
So Jay Honda and I met many lives ago for Jay. He's been with various corporate venture arms over the years, and now he's with Marubeni, which is a Japanese firm. Can you tell us what that is and talk a little about yourself and your background?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Jay Honda. Started my career on the startup side, focusing on UI, UX, and product strategy, and that just makes it more important from the corporate innovation side. I've been in the corporate innovation and venture world for over 12 years with various firms, but also very supportive of the corporate venture and innovation ecosystem. Work with governments all over the world, various brands all over the world to really figure out how to solve that innovation puzzle through venture and collaboration. I joined Marubeni Ventures about a year ago. Marubeni is a large trade organization. There's 450 businesses globally, everything from consumer retail to materials, energy, infrastructure, things in space. And so we operate in a lot of different domains, of which, I've been trying to figure out how do we prepare ourselves for the future. And so in this last iteration of VC Hype, I was really focusing on how brands are using Web3 technologies to engage with consumers or their customers, not just for crypto and all those types of things, but really it's just a new paradigm, new tools. And then all of a sudden, generative AI just took center stage. I've been paying attention to AI since my early days in the startup side, tinker with tools, but this wave is just incredible, right? And so, I've allocating a lot of time understanding the actual use cases and adoption rate, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon. So thank you very much for having me.
Very cool. I want to mention to the audience, you can place any questions you have in the chat. We will try to get to them, but we have a very full agenda, so we'll see how that goes. All right, I want to start out by talking about the tech cycle with Tim. Gerard just made the statement that the technology is ready for the corporation, and the corporation needs to be doing things to get ready for the technology. And the technology is being developed by all kinds of different players, the big ones, the small ones. Where are we really in that cycle? And is it ready for the ways in which corporations are going to try to use it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think Gerard was absolutely right. It's kind of funny. Every kind of 18 months, we have some new hype cycle.
Yes.
New term, some next big thing. And, 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 out of 100, they're not really real. Or, there's no real there, or they're nowhere close to being ready for prime time, and they're 10 years out. AI is one of those things that it's legit. Like it's happening and ready. And it's kind of interesting. It was kind of brewing for a long time. And then really took OpenAI to launch ChatGPT for people to get that wow, and then trying to figure out how it applies to them. So I think it's going to change absolutely everything. Fully agree with the Gerhard's comments. If you look by functional area or by vertical, it's just disrupting all over the place already. So, in my own world, there's all this debate about whether it's evil or good, and whether it's, going to replace or help humans. I tend to believe it's going to do good than evil, and it's not a replacement, but this concept of a co-pilot for humans. We're seeing it. Pick your functional area. We could go through things that are happening that are changing everything. All my companies are aggressive users of Microsoft's GitHub Copilot. For example, we're seeing engineers be able to write 3x as many lines of code per day with GitHub Copilot as without it. And we're seeing this awesome trend where you can hire a low-cost engineer internationally or in a low-cost geography in the US and arm them with Copilot trained with the code of their most senior coder on the team. And these new engineers are able to code much more like a senior engineer a lot faster. So, you go across marketing with what Kindy's doing to be able to answer any question. HR, there's cool stuff going on. Sales, there's cool stuff going on. Maybe the most interesting things are, for the chief sustainability officer, with some of the really neat things that are going on for vulnerable families and the planet. So it's legit, and we're having a blast. Some of my companies, like Kindy, been around for a while. The world wasn't getting it. Now all of a sudden, they're inundated.
Yeah, we're going to hear from Ryan, the CEO.
Really fun.
Right after this.
It's really fun. So yeah, if you're a corporate man, if you're not all over this thing, I think you're really going to miss out. And corporates, frankly, this is one area where corporates are in a better position than startups to execute on the opportunity, because they have the data already and they tend to have the workflow and attention already. So they're in a really good position if they execute.
I think we would all agree with that, except for one thing. And Evangelist pointed this out to me the other day, which is there's still quite a bit of confusion about what this really is and how you use it and what resources you need. I mean, I'll take IBM as an example. It's killing us to buy enough GPUs to do this stuff. They're very expensive and getting to be a little scarce. So Evangelist, do you want to comment on the kinds of assumptions people are making about this stuff and the capabilities and, what they really need to understand and what kinds of resources are required? Where do we stand with that?
So, actually, I should say that I'm not as enthusiastic as Tim is about this. I will preface my comments by saying that one of the advantages that I feel our firm has is that in addition to funding the startups, we work with large corporations, and we not only work them at a high level of advice, but we end up prototyping certain things for them, which doesn't make us quite the pure VC that some of that one would think of as an institutional investor. So if you look at, there's no question that the enterprise is experimenting right now with generative AI. I would say that probably about 20%, my count, nothing more official, understand what it really means. The others need to be educated with what it means. We've been working recently with a financial services company on programming. And I would say that there was a lot of productivity increase with very experienced programmers. There was a lot of false starts with the inexperienced programmers, because the output of these systems, particularly if you look at large language models, whether it is open source, completely open source like Falcon, for example, or proprietary open source like OpenAI's. They're good at certain things, but we're pushing them to do things that they have not been designed for. So I think right now there needs to be both an education of what generative AI will be good for, as well as under what conditions it will be used, and which of these conditions will take the generative part and which will take other parts of AI. And I'll give you actually a quick example, and then I'll stop my monologue. We talk about these co-pilots. So co-pilots come in various forms, but the ones that are most effective appear to be ones that are really neurocognitive systems, meaning they combine the pure neural network models that many LLMs include with other forms of explicit knowledge, like the cognitive part, like the symbolic knowledge part, be it this may be represented in the form of rules, may be represented in the form of knowledge graphs. But the fact is that where we see most effectiveness is in building this type of systems. And this type of systems are not being built just by taking ChatGPT and prompting it in a few ways. So even with our portfolio companies, I'm trying to dampen the enthusiasm and say, just be careful on how you come into this and what you're trying to achieve by using this type of technology. And one last comment, by the way, as we have, and this is something that Gerard brought up, as we're thinking about the cloud-based resources, the very large resources that will be required to both train these models and use these models. So in other words, both the training aspect and the inferencing aspect, we really need to rewire our data centers. And from large corporations, whether it is AWS or Microsoft with Azure, to smaller companies providing this kind of resources, we have a lot of work to be doing, everything from energy consumption to communication to chips and all of that. So again, the enterprise has not gotten hold of what is necessary. We're still at the excitement and the awe and there's a reason for excitement and awe, but there is also a reason for a lot of thinking and planning before we get too excited about the impact that generative AI by itself will have on enterprise operations.
Yeah, I think that's all really true. And I want to have Jay comment on this too, because he's working with a very large corporation with lots of different business units. So what's your experience with Marubeni been so far? I mean, are you trying to educate them about this?
Yeah, I think a lot of corporates have been exposed to the concept of AI over the last decade plus. The generative piece is what's new and exciting and also confusing. And so not just with Marubeni, but with a lot of my corporate peers, we've been talking about what it's going to take for mass adoption. And so, I think corporate policy is preventing this from happening just because we need to be very, very careful. And because there's still a lack of transparency and trust, especially with data, those are like some of the first hurdles that we have to crack and cross. Tools like Midjourney, you can't copyright anything that's created, right? And it also contributes to their hype. So all this confidential or private data, we have to be very, very careful not to be overexposed to it. And so those are some of the issues. The other part is the measurable ROI, like they understand that value, but how do we actually enable that at scale? And so we're still at that. I think the mass majority of corporates are still at that experimental phase. We've been awed by the capabilities of GPT and all these other tools. How do we do this then thus advance that initiative? So we're still at that early cusp of believing that it's real, and then of course believing that trust.
Yeah, that's a good point about the data and privacy and so forth. And in fact, I wanted to talk to Ben about that because we're talking about the enterprise, we're talking about corporations. And when I was giving presentations about what's going on in venture and what's going on in the industry at IBM over the last 2 years, I was talking about ESG. And so, we really need to look at governance and the ideas about how do you audit this stuff? Is it transparent? Is it biased? The idea of responsible AI and ethics, the privacy of information, all of those things are getting a lot of attention now, but are the are the technologists really doing anything about that? And what are the corporations doing, especially in places, in regulated industries or places like the EU where it's actually required by law? Ben, can you talk about that?
Sure. So the unsatisfying answer is it really depends. I agree with you that there is tremendous awareness around the risks now of exposing proprietary information or personal information to large language models. Great example was Samsung having an employee feed proprietary information into the free version of ChatGPT, and all of a sudden that information gets rolled up into fine tuning of their models and has been disclosed. So many corporates are banning the use of large language models or ChatGPT specifically right now, while they try to figure out how to work with it safely. In terms of the model providers or application providers that are out there, I'd say there's sort of three buckets. There are folks that are developing models or making them accessible to developers on a sort of use at your own risk kind of approach. With those, they generally will say in their terms of use, don't upload any personal information and don't upload anything proprietary. They haven't figured out the especially the GDPR ramifications of their models yet. You also have some application providers that were existing service providers, and they're sort of bolting a large language model onto their existing offerings because it's the shiny object and they have to do it. Not necessarily the best thought out products yet, but they'll probably improve. And there are some other companies that are taking a very deliberate approach to how to use generative AI to solve customer problems. And they tend to be very focused. And in some of those cases, they are thinking about some of these concerns around privacy in regulated industries, healthcare especially. But there's a substantial burden on the users still to be careful about the data that they are feeding into these models. There's a burden on InfoSec groups to ensure that they understand where the data is being processed and stored, and ensuring that their use of this software is compliant with regulations that they're subjected to by the jurisdictions they operate in. So pretty early, I think that there's probably more emphasis right now on figuring out how to manage proprietary data more so than personal data, because the amount of knowledge that is tied up in corporations that is inaccessible to the broader community is immense. And that's where a lot of competitive advantage can come from through the use of these models. But it has to be used very carefully for training models. There has to be consideration given to who, even within a corporation, is entitled to see results generated from some of these data, since you may have customer data or supplier data that all is siloed today. So a lot of open questions there.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'm going to have Tim say a couple more words about the enterprise, because a lot of first-time founders really don't understand corporates. They learn, but when they're very young in their business, a lot of them really do not understand. And Tim, you fund first-time founders, so can you talk about that? Are you doing specific things to prepare them?
Yeah, there's so much. There's selection, and then there's coaching. On the selection side, if you're building a consume B2C, the next, dog walking, marketplace or whatever, the bar of experience is lower. I think if you're building a SaaS company serving enterprises, the bar's higher. So, you tend to look for experience in venture-backed startups before that have sold to the enterprise in your first-time founders. So they may not have been a founder before, but have been through venture-backed startups. And then, there's really two pieces. You need your tech founder to really have built things for the enterprise before. And you need your seller co-founder to come out of B2B. So the bar is pretty high. So it's a lot of get the attributes right for starters. And then it's tons and tons of coaching. It's kind of fun. I had an engineer buddy of mine build a a GPT engine for me. So I've got a couple hundred pages of writings I've done that I coach my founders on. Happy to answer any question for a founder.
That's one way to do it.
Sometimes they're a little afraid to ask what they think is a dumb question. So now on my Pivot North website, I now have this thing called Tim GPT, and you can ask any question as a founder, it'll answer it from the data.
That's awesome.
And then I get every question, and then I can tune it or update it if I don't like the automated generated answer. So it's just, it's a lot of screening, and then it's just a ton of coaching, especially in those first 2 to 3 years as they get their sea legs and get momentum.
Oh, that's really fun. Well, let's talk about, your investment in your founders, because, we deliberately put investors on this panel. So where are we in that cycle, and what does the investment activity look like? Gerhard was making the point about innovation and new ideas. So is there a great opportunity, and where are the best opportunities? Why don't you continue to riff on that a bit?
Yeah, it's, I'm the eternal optimist, so I'm glad.
That's why you're an investor.
I'm glad Evangelos has taken the opposite side. It will take the enterprise a long time, but I'm seeing tons and tons of activity. So, if 20% of the enterprise is excited about an area of technology, that's awesome. That's more than you need for a startup to go off and have success. So, I've broken it down, both functional and vertical. So by functional area, what are the horizontal opportunities that are enabled? So we got really interesting things going on for sales and marketing and engineering, and the chief sustainability officers. I've got 2 different companies doing some really interesting things in sales using LLMs on top of email to try to figure out how to finally unlock that massive relationship set that companies have. If we can get sales reps to be 3x as productive as they are today, startups will need a pre-seed round and a seed round, and then probably won't need to raise Series A through D anymore if you get that kind of efficiency gain. So pretty much across the board, pick any functional role, and you're starting to see really interesting use cases emerge. And then in particular vertical markets, man, some of them are going to get just completely disrupted and improved as a function of various forms of AI software. And it's going to, a lot of it is going to end up trickling down to be good for, the bottom 2/3 of the US population that struggles to make it to payday. Really interesting technologies that are getting applied there that are going to make their lives a heck of a lot easier and make our community stronger as a result.
Yeah, I agree about verticals. I'm always interested in that with various technologies. So Evangelos, where are you seeing the best opportunities? Do you agree? Are you seeing some other spaces?
So as part of our investment thesis, we have organized the companies into 4 categories. We have the infrastructure developers, kind of the picks and shovels, if you will, that always come in whenever we have a new type of technology, whether it is cloud computing or social, whatever. The next type of company, the next category is the LLM developers. The next category is content generators, and the final category is what we call intelligent agents developers or co-pilots. That class. As a firm, we're mostly interested in the last category. Interestingly enough, in the content generator, so these are companies that typically put a shallow veneer around existing LLMs, whether they're open source or proprietary. We actually see the potential there for creating winners with very small headcount. So there might be some interesting companies there, but the problem that as investors we have to worry about is what are the barriers to entry. So in other words, what kind of moats these companies create. We think that there is a significant opportunity to create moats in the intelligent agent kind of co-pilot category. Today, most of the interest is around the infrastructure developers. You see these, companies, whether it is Llama Index, Pinecone, et cetera, and so forth, that are creating the for that. So I think that over the next couple of years, we will see both significant, given the investor interest today in generative AI, we will see a significant number of companies being created, but I also expect to see high mortality rate.
Yeah. I do want to talk about adoption a little bit with Jay and Ben, but Evangelist, while we're on these subjects, the models outputs aren't always accurate. And there's various reasons for that. It could be that people are cheating, and they do, there are criminals using this stuff, or just people who are, enhancing themselves, what they do. And the models themselves are not always accurate. We've seen them. So what precautions can enterprises take? Can they audit this? Can they remediate it?
Well, first of all, this is why I said earlier that what we are seeing is that the output of this, so there is a user bifurcation. The experienced users, the experienced programmers, the experienced content developers, the experienced biotech engineers, they are able to self-monitor the output of these systems and determine whether an answer is acceptable or not. Mm-hmm. The problem comes with the more junior workers who require in a sense, some sort of supervision to make sure that what they're using is not inappropriate, is not wrong, is not copyright protected, and all that. So that's why first of all, we're starting to see that there's going to be a difference even in the productivity. I agree that for the experienced employee, there's going to be significant productivity increase by using generative AI. The junior employee will see less of a productivity improvement. There's going to be some, but not as high as for the experienced. Now, we need to be thinking a lot more about explainability, traceability. The World Economic Council has articulated a number of guidelines in terms of how we should be monitoring the performance of these models, the large language models, in order to ensure that and get more comfortable with the quality of the output. But the risks are quite high. Think of what's happening in all of the talk about deep fakes, about phishing mails, about what will happen in the coming election period here in the US, and what's already happening in the election campaigns in other countries. So there are big risks here that I don't think technology has answers yet. But these are risks that we definitely need to be aware of.
And we're going to look at cybersecurity at a future event. And maybe by the time we get around to that, some of this will get resolved. But I think it's going to be a big problem for a long time. I want to go now, circle back to the idea of adoption. And Ben has been saying to me that something we all know, that the enterprise needs to take steps to be ready for AI and for generative AI. And a lot of that has to do with data centers and information and how they handle it and what they have and how they store it, all kinds of things. Ben, can you talk about what the enterprise needs to do?
Sure. I think a lot of what has to happen falls under the broader heading of digital transformation.
Yeah, that's true.
And enterprises have been working on this for a while. It varies in terms of maturity by company, but just how do you know what information you have today? What's in your employees' heads? What's on a laptop somewhere? What's on a shared system that's more broadly accessible? Who should have access to that information? So that there's a large data strategy, data governance challenge that enterprises need to tackle in many cases as a prerequisite for successfully leveraging at least proprietary large language models. And lots of questions around the data access point in particular. So any enterprise that's going down this road really needs to start asking those questions first. But I think in parallel, you can have teams that are looking at large language models and generative AI in general, and start to try to educate themselves regarding what these models can do. And then start looking for problem statements where you can do some matchmaking and help to sort of steer the data governance effort to ensure that what you end up with is going to support the inclusion of large language models in the applications that you use to increase productivity or deliver better solutions to your customers.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And in fact, I just want to wrap up by asking Jay another question about adoption, because, and this is true of every tech cycle, you don't see the enterprise going all in on anything at first. You know, they'll adopt something at specific business units. Maybe it's top down, maybe it's bottoms up. But, you know, if you're working for a firm like Marubeni and you have hundreds of businesses, what does that look like? Are there some that are more ready for this? Are they going to be able or willing to deal with lots of different versions of generative AI and lots of different vendors? How's that? It seems to me a little chaotic right now. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm, you know, at the highest level, I'm pushing my will that AI is a productivity tool and it stays that way. And as other panelists have mentioned earlier, I think the vertically specific use cases, it'll create fragmentation of adoption, but it's a very focused tool, right? It increases or it enhances my productivity towards a specific task. And the less data reliant it is, I think the more it'll scale and be adopted faster in the first wave of adoption. So we do see that fragmentation. The other side of that coin is the general AI as a general tool of productivity. I think Microsoft's Copilot is doing a fantastic job on accomplishing that, right? So Copilot kind of spreads across the entire portfolio of Microsoft's products versus these very specific things. So I think right now it's going to be a combination of both. Maybe Microsoft's Copilot in its best case scenario, they will be the center hub where then they could start integrating other types of services to then further enhance capabilities. And so right now we're still at that experimental phase, obviously, and I think fragmentation is going to be fine, right? Because people have different siloed access to data, and we can't just have a general policy saying, here, startup company, take all our data and figure things out.
Yeah, people hate to do that, actually. So we're about out of time. I'm going to ask a wrap-up question, and you can go first, Jay. If you want to stick your neck out, do you want to predict who some of the winners or losers will be here?
You know, I'm a realist, and I've been watching how things are happening, and I think the short-term winners are going to be the companies adopting AI to improve efficiency. I don't want to call out any specific startups in particular, but as this improvement of efficiencies happen, there's going to be a backlash. And so the losers on that end will be the skilled workers, the creatives, the doers, the knowledge workers, as their capabilities are being kind of disrupted, right? Journalists. But I do believe over time that they will make a comeback, right? These knowledge workers that might have been disrupted because AI has its limitations, these doers will need to change their approach as directors and then adapt to these new tools. And then that will further kind of kickstart or enhance the productivity movement.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if that's true. Ben, do you want to stick your neck out and comment on that? Winners and losers.
Yeah, I think there's a big opportunity in knowledge management and sort of expert worker enhancement, let's say. And so to get there, someone's got to figure out how to manage proprietary information for training models very effectively. And I don't think there are clear leaders in that space yet. But in support of that, someone who figures out how to make it really easy to structure data from the enterprises have today, but don't necessarily have organized, will probably end up doing very well. And again, I don't think there are clear winners. In some industries there are, like biotech. I think there are some better solutions for knowledge management today. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there to make it easier for enterprises to become ready to leverage generative AI. That it could end up being a bigger winner than the generative AI companies themselves.
Yeah. Okay, Evangelist, do you want to comment on that?
Like it happens in every cycle, we'll probably see 2 to 3 winners from every infrastructure category that proves critical to the new stack. So, for example, vector databases being one, maybe AI being another. So we'll see, and typically between the first and the third, we have a 20 to 30% discount in exit valuation. I also believe, though, that so we'll see the same. By the way, I'm sorry, we'll see the same pattern in large in companies that provide LLMs. OpenAI being a good example, but there will be 2, 3 more others to the extent that they continue to prove that this type of LLMs are broadly useful. For example, there was a recent article that the performance of ChatGPT is decreasing, or as
I know, I saw that.
Anyway, I also think that there's going to be, so Tim mentioned the example of the Microsoft's copilots. I think we're going to see this type of copilots in many other business applications. Some of them will be built by the owners of this application. So, for example, ServiceNow, Workday, those companies, Adobe has already done so and has done a great job in offering a copilot. I think we will see companies offering them and being acquired by the business application providers that either do not have the expertise or the time or both, maybe, to develop the copilots themselves. So that's why I see it as winners.
So Tim, make some predictions.
So I think in the incumbents, I think Microsoft's in just a wonderful position. They got the vision, they got massive amounts of data,
money,
and they got money too. And then they've got workflow apps that touch, nearly every white collar worker, all day, every day. I think probably the most underhyped thing has been this GitHub Copilot. I think it'll end up being one of their most valuable franchises over time. I think it's gonna be interesting to watch whether it's an incumbent or a startup that wins, but Outlook and hosted exchanges, kind of personal productivity today, that can become an AI powered marketplace, where business matching is done. That's a really interesting area. And I think either an incumbent or a startup, if you take every functional role in most verticals, I think there's going to be a $10 to $100 billion company created in all of them. And it'll be fun to watch whether that's the incumbents that grab most of that or whether a startup will grab it. But in my optimist hat on from the group, I think there's going to be really, really valuable companies built here. I'm more excited about AI than probably any other technology I've seen in my 25 years in venture.
Yeah, I have to say I am too. It's partly my background. It's just exciting. And it is fun. It's already fun. It's going to continue to be fun. Now, we got lots more questions and we could talk for another couple hours, but we're out of time because I really want you to hear from a couple of hot startups who I know personally, and they're really wonderful. You'll just love hearing from them. I do want to say, if you're local, you can visit us at San Jose State University in person on September 21st in the afternoon from 3 to 7, and we will continue to talk about these things. So thank you, panel. That was really enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Deborah. Very insightful. You have assembled a wonderful panel. And now we come to what made Pitch Global actually famous, right? The last 10 years, nearly 10 years, Casey and partially also me, we are holding all these innovation events, but they have outcomes, impact. So this year alone, our companies that we mentored, with partially funded by the state of California, various different institutes, have raised over $120 million. Since I have the pleasure of working with Casey, it's close to $1 billion already. And so needless to say, this event here today was actually sponsored by San Jose State University. And in your invite was also a survey form, which we are required to actually fill out and represent. Otherwise, funding one day will stop. Everybody knows how government works.
That would be sad.
So I'm putting the link back in again here in the chat room. Please, all the participants, whoever can, please fill it out because it helps us. The more reviews we are getting, the better these events can be continued. And as Deborah said, our next event will be actually live at San Jose State University. So we have them to send them the thanks. And I have to send double thanks to San Jose State because I was supposed to start at 11 o'clock after the finish to start the startup mentorship program, which I have to do today online and fly in tonight to be in person because Southwest from all the flights had decided today to delay this flight by 3 hours. So I couldn't have actually hosted this easily. And so I've decided that the students deserve full 2 segments today, and I will do this online. With that said, without further ado, one of our companies is 11Sight that we're pivoting a little bit from the agenda, is coming in first today. And their remarkable founder was funded before by corporate venture capital, had 2 positive exits. And Alex Golo will talk today about inbound sales technology that is in the video space, in which AI will also play a role when it comes to sentiment analysis and other elements. Alex, are you prepared and ready to present? Please come online now.
I am prepared and ready. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Golu. Maybe I'll say a couple words, give you a synopsis of my take on AI and how at 11Sight we are actually working with the transition for businesses, because we ourselves are not an AI company, but we leverage AI considerably. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have a PhD from UC Berkeley. I do teach on the side entrepreneurship courses at NEU and at UC Berkeley. My first startup was SMS application in wireless handsets when Netscape was new and the Motorola flip phone was the most advanced phone. Subsequently, we did a IoT in the cloud startup. That one was initially funded by Siemens, a CVC. That actually allowed us to do that company because otherwise VCs were not ready without a proof of concept to fund us. This time around, since this is our third foray into doing a startup with my co-founder Farov, he and I, we know each other from our days at UC Berkeley as PhD students. We started this company 11Sight with our own money, and we have been expanding it both with revenues as well as angel funding. In terms of what it is that we do, we started before the pandemic with the vision that more business can be conducted online in these type of meetings. We knew about Zoom, so scheduled meetings were taken care of. We knew about WhatsApp, so friends talking to each other was taken care of. So we said what we should do is help businesses connect with their customers to accelerate revenues and improve customer satisfaction. And the way I think ChatGPT plays into this is a lot of businesses are now trying to figure out how to leverage AI chatbots to reduce their customer success and sales staff. And Tim mentioned that, startups won't need a lot of funding because, and I actually want to talk to your startup that increases the efficiency of salespeople by 3x, because that fits perfectly into what it is that we do. Because AI ultimately will get much better. But today it's just at the beginning. It's similar to in the 60s, AI was supposed to be chess grandmasters within the next year. It didn't happen in a year. It happened in 50 years. AI will take over a lot of job functions. It's not going to take another 50 years, but it's not going to be tomorrow. So there are a lot of use cases where AI can carry the conversation with the prospect or the customer up to a certain point, but then needs to hand it over to a real person. And that's basically where we come in with our on-demand meetings. We take over from the AI chatbot. The AI chatbot tells us what it is that we need to do next. The human carries on the discussion, the transcripts gets fed back to the chat system such that in time it's better and better trained. So let me show you how all that comes together and tell you more about our company. I mean, there are 350 companies that do video meetings according to G2 and Capterra. That's already telling you that this segment is going vertical with courtroom classroom solutions. We at 11sight are focused on sales, customer engagement, and revenue acceleration. And what we have found is that that requires an integration of not only video functionality, but call center, as well as sales enablement. And this is where AI comes in into one solution, right? Because if you want to accelerate sales, and now I'm applying the AI to sales acceleration and customer success and improving customer satisfaction, you need to decide, do I want to be on this video call? And that's basically where AI helps to say, hey, you need to talk to this customer. And if that's the case, you need to have that meeting now, as opposed to a scheduled meeting down the line. The agent who goes in needs to know who the customer is, what the goals are. That meeting room environment needs to be connected entirely to the tech stack, allow maximum progress, and make the documentation go back into the AI to actually train it. To give you an idea, so the main building block of our solution is something we call an E-line. An E-line essentially is a set of team members that are qualified to do a certain type of meeting. So this could be a sales meeting, it can be an investor meeting, it can be a support meeting. And whether we connect this on a queue, we ring all the people and we do round robin, these are all configurable on our system, right? So I'm going to now show you how we use our own platform. If you navigate to a high intent area, we do give you the ability to call us immediately. And I actually need to turn my video off. Oh, okay. So that's actually my other camera that just kicked in. So of course, we ask a few questions before we put that conversation through. There are companies we are working with like B2Metric, ZoomInfo, and so forth, that based on customer behavior already are qualifying the web visitors. Another way of qualifying the web visitor is engaging it in a very simple chat. The chat I'm using is HubSpot hierarchical chatbot. It's not an AI chatbot, but our customers are using AI here. So if I want to talk to sales, and you may have noticed sales support and investor actually matches the team I have here. In these demos, we always call in as Arthur Doyle because it tells the other team members not to pick up the call. So the domain name in this case or otherwise conversation tells us that this is a qualified prospect that I want to talk to. So we give them the option of a video call, right? So they can then now fix their hair or do what they need to do and initiate a call. This is the view of the sales agent. I know who's calling. I pick up the call. To the caller, this is just yet another regular video call, right? So they are doing their regular video call. But as an agent, maybe the AI chatbot that handed it over to me gives me a call script and tells me what has happened so far and what needs to happen next, right? I know where the call came from. I know it was the HubSpot chatbot where the customer engaged us. I have a CRM connection. So some of these may already be fed into the system by ZoomInfo or Clearbit, but whatever your ICP qualifiers are as an attribute, like we like companies that have a short sales cycle, their customers are worth $1,000 and more, so that a video call is relevant, they need inbound motion and a few salespeople. So all of these we have encoded in the CRM as pick list values so that the sales guy doesn't really even need to type much. We even have partners that pre-populate some of this data. Now, I can make maximum progress. I can bring somebody else into this meeting live on demand. Their device will ring the same as mine did, and I can schedule the next meeting right here to move things forward. Now, we are about to add Clearbit and Zoom Info as 2 additional, what we call call cards on the right side. Those are basically our way of adding the entire sales tech, MarTech, and AI ecosystem into the solution. Now, this call then gets recorded, as actually it says up here, and the transcription and the entire call outcome gets fed back into HubSpot, gets fed into ChatGPT for a summary. I can document the outcome, and we also maintain the database hygiene. So the nice thing about this is that initially we are expecting the salesperson to ask some of the questions and update the last bit of details, maybe create some call notes. But in time, the AI chatbot with the summary can automate that. We are, for example, talking to Sunrise in Switzerland, a telecom carrier, which wants to actually pave the path for incorporating AI now as much as they can, but have a transition strategy such that AI can do more and more with their solutions. So that's the problem, that's the solution. Now to some very quick other elements of what's a startup, what's the business plan. We are the first actually who has this video focus in an integrated way. We are starting with sales. We're going to follow with customer success. Everybody understands the value of instant interaction, but instant interactions are for now, for whatever reason, limited to text. Video meetings are scheduled for 3 days from now, and I never understand why you let a warm lead on your website go away so that your SDRs can chase them after the fact. Market is huge because if we make $150, $200 per sales guy, it's already $2.8 billion as I add customer success. Bottom up, these are the market sizes. Top down, 40 billion, that's a top down number. It's all video interaction use cases. Now, the way we are going to market is we are in the ecosystem. We have integrated with Cisco's WebEx platform. We have integrated with HubSpot, as you saw it. I told you that Clearbit is going to be one of those call cards. We are selling direct in US, but overseas, we have a regional reseller in Turkey, and they have some traction. And we are working on some partners in GCC who will resell our solution. In terms of where we are with revenues and customers, the way we look at it is around 4 swim lanes. As a vertical, automotive has come to the top because it is just in that ICP, right? If I want to buy a car, I'm going to do my homework and I'm going to buy it. The dealership wants to talk to me now. We do have customers who have started rolling this out. We will be expanding in this next 6 months. Infrastructure sales, Avgo builds a self-checking kiosk for hotels. They pay us $1,200 per hotel they are deployed in. They are currently live with 67 hotels, and they just signed Best Western that has 8,000. So we're gonna actually grow our revenues by growing with existing customers while we add more customers. And Sunrise, I already talked to you about. We do have SaaS sales. You can go to our website and you will find that there's a $30 and $50 per month per E-line price ticket that you can sign up. We do have some traction in here. Our goal is to target the 167,000 HubSpot customers. We have had a lot of discussion with HubSpot. They love the idea because they invented inbound marketing. We are complementing them with inbound sales. And I told you that regional resellers, and this number is their projection for the next 6 months. So these are revenues, not ARR. We think that we have proven the swim lanes. So it's now all in raising the funds and execution. So why do we want to raise funds? We want to add salespeople, but we definitely need to spend more time in the market go to HubSpot's Inbounders, Salesforce's event to actually let people know. And that, I think, will allow us to succeed. In terms of what we have raised so far, about 5.5,900,000 came from us founders and management. We did a seed round that was 2.7 million that left us with an 11 million post. We have a safe in place that provides 20% discount against the next round. We want to add 2 to 5 million to that in Q4. I do have an investor interested. We have sort of a handshake on a term sheet. His catch is he needs to actually take his fund public so that he can have liquidity. So if anybody wants to come in, our safe is open and you can get the 20% discount, or you want to give a lead term sheet, I will be more than happy to take that. How can we exit? Zoom, Google, Microsoft, as they go vertical, they are going to acquire the CRMs or other technology like Zoom Info. We would fit even into their portfolio. And somebody like Sunrise, a carrier that doesn't want to be a just dumb pipe, may actually want to go vertical. And I think it was Verizon that acquired BlueJean. So I do want to mention patents, because this first one is very crucial. Typically, when you dial a number, where you are connected is predefined. Whereas in our world, when somebody clicks on a link, who we connect to is a function of the previous behavior of that customer on the website as decided by AI or other systems. So that capability, routing the call based on past behavior, is what we patented. And presence in the meeting, where you can audit the call and provide ideas, is another patent we have. These are 2 patents we have, 2 more are pending. I told you about myself a little bit. I'm also an investor at Keiretsu. So that actually allowed us to go the angel round this time around. My co-founder, Farah, his second company was Tiger Hotelnet. We did together. This is the SMS application for wireless handset company. He built an RFID chip that was location capable. I made the supply chain more efficient. Pink was acquired by Excel KKR for 50 million. In 2020, he sold his solution to Maxim Integrated. We have a GM in Europe who is also our VP customer success, and Bora is our salesperson. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. One thing I want to show you is our key progress metric, which is the number of video call minutes on our platform. And that's going up. And I think that's going to go even faster as Algo deploys. These are some of the accolades we have won: G2, Capterra, Gartner. I'm about to add to the reviews our HubSpot reviews, because we are in their app store and we already have 5 reviews, all 5-star. And the Los Angeles Tribune award we won, that actually was something that Axel had invited us to 3 years ago. Axel, that's still on the slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. Yes, I'm very enthusiastic about your solution. And I hope that our audience, especially our investor audience, actually understands it. I have time for one question. Tim, would you like to ask a question?
What are you seeing in sales productivity pre and post you? Are you seeing a massive?
Yes, that's actually a very good question. Somehow that slide didn't make the short deck. What we see is, so the no-show rate on a scheduled meeting is like 20 to 30%. First off, that goes away. But our customers report 1.5 to 2x conversion on interactions that start with a video call on our platform. There are multiple reasons for that. One is the prospect that calls with video is actually qualified. The choice of making a video call is a self-qualification, plus everything else we do in terms of making sure that the agent is prepared, the first impression, you nail that first meeting, the CRM hygiene is maintained such that all the follow-up is done, and increasing efficiency with AI. So it's not surprising to me that that number, in fact, will go up in time. And that was reported both in automotive as well as in B2B SaaS companies.
That's great.
Thank you
Very
so
cool.
much. Great question, Tim. So if you stop the share, please. Now we come to our second company, which is called Peritus AI, and Santosh Srinivasan is actually presenting. Santosh, please share your screen. I'm looking forward to what you're doing.
Hey, thanks, Axel. Yeah, hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
All right, so great panel and also great kickoff at the beginning of the call. I'm going to focus on a slightly different thing. I'm not going to be doing a standard investor pitch. I came a little cold because I got invited fairly late, but I'm prepared for answering any questions coming in. As I listened to all the conversations on the panel, this whole notion of a co-pilot was mentioned multiple times, and I firmly believe that the current generation of AI models are going to be super useful for productivity improvement, and later with automation through workflow integration. And that's the thesis we have had for the past few years. We initially focused on the customer success segment side, and then we got interest from the security side. So today I'll focus on the security side for people who are interested. And Deb, I know you mentioned cybersecurity is something else you want to do later. Happy to come by and talk more in that meeting as well. A little bit about me and the company. So my focus has been on big data for a long time. Early member of the Hadoop team at Yahoo, later I was running an entire department at Cloudera. And then we started Peritus with the problems I found that enterprises had with dealing with data. I think one of the people here mentioned that enterprises have data on the panel and they are very well positioned. That has been a recurrent theme even when we are doing the big data work and when we went public through Cloudera. And those companies were focused on getting all of your data in a single platform and enabling use cases on top. And those use cases were primarily based on analytics at that time and later a little bit of machine learning. And now with LLMs, there are more possibilities, but I'll ground it in reality for this discussion. I think Gerard also mentioned in the keynote, there's a war for talent. So using LLMs, and I think Evangelos, who mentioned that having these veneer companies doing things on top of LLMs, they're very thin, but they can get very quick traction. The moat is very shallow in those cases. So we have built some of those things over time. And the key to that is to have your own data sets so that you can find value quickly and then tap into the data sets that enterprises bring in. So we have a world-class AI ML team. Our tech lead used to be Joshua Benji, a student. We have students from Waterloo who have been on staff for a few years now. So security has always been a data play, right? There is obviously domain knowledge, and the data required to tackle your security problems is all around. It's in your CRM, your metrics, and also a lot of the SIM and SOAR products that have been built. And what we have taken as an approach from a technology perspective is to get data in one place, and then you have to build a product. LLMs are great, but as I think, Tim, you mentioned, ChatGPT told you that a product is more important than the technology underpinning that specific product. And that's the thesis we have at Peritus as well. We are focused on shipping products which are backed by AI and ML features. Yeah. And unlocking productivity has a very serendipitous and positive side effect. It frees up the team's time to do other things that they couldn't get to, including innovation. That addresses some of the panel comments around what will these skilled people do now that they don't have work to do. And today's meeting, I'll focus on the security co-pilot use cases on three themes: on the productivity side, the coaching side, and prioritization. Three themes on my primary audience is going to be a SOC analyst. There are many security companies doing several things. Our use case is mainly targeting the SOC analysts, and they have a ton of alerts coming in. They need to prioritize, figure out what's happening, and then contribute knowledge and learn from others. So how do you accelerate productivity? As you know, with security use cases, a lot of things happening at the same time. If you can recommend what playbook to use on your SOAR products, that takes you a long way in trying to remediate what's happening there. And how do we do this? We have a recommendation engine. And one of the main drawbacks of LLMs is they hallucinate. They don't have the enterprise context, and they don't tell you where the answers are coming from. So these are three main problems with the generative AI LLMs. And by generative AI, I'm going to solely focus on the textual side of things. I'm not going to be focused on any other sources like audio, video and stuff like that. This is all text-based NLP heavy technology. So we do recommend playbooks that are in your repositories, and we also help create or generate playbooks by training the models on your existing workflows and anything that is publicly available. So that's the generative part here. One is the recommendation part. The second part is generating something new based on what you want to create. That helps move the needle for a SOC analyst to do what is not already there. We also recommend people who are experts in the areas on which the product is being analyzed on or the problem is being analyzed on. We look at all your historical data and we know who's good at what. So in case you're not able to get to an answer, we also tell you who you can talk to. And finally, the last mind problem here is to connect to your other workflow systems to make sure that the solution can be applied. Okay. So playbook automation is one use case for productivity. Second one is probably a lot of companies are doing this is Q&A, but we've been doing this for a few years early on, on transformer-based models and now on top of LLMs. You can ask questions. We bring in the enterprise context. We reduce or completely eliminate hallucination by trying to give you an answer in the context of your enterprise. This is using retrieval augmented generation and also pointing out where the answer is coming from. So you can actually vet the source or not blindly use the answer and run with it. Okay. So this is the second one. We also bring in the expert context here so that you can know who in the organization has done well in these contexts. So if you cannot find a good answer, you can reach out to them. Right. So that's the second part here. So you want to coach and also learn from others' experience. Last part is around prioritization. And this is where in the security context, you get thousands and millions of alerts. And the way most of these companies have been doing is they use criticality to surface the top alerts, but there is alert fatigue going on. What we do is we actually group alerts and incidents based on the potential root cause, use the CV source, the MITRE framework, and just suggest that if you address some of these, you can reduce your alerts by 5-7%. So that way you focus on things that move the needle instead of trying to tackle things one by one. Yeah. And we do that visually by grouping things and showing it to you in a way where it makes sense from your product hierarchy and how you deal with things. Right. So this is the third one. So productivity improvement, coaching and learning, and prioritization. And the way we do that is very scalable ingestion, tapping into your custom sources. We already have data from 100 odd open source projects with millions of questions and millions of users' data. And then we bring it together in two different form factors. One is a web product, which can target people who are trying to look at the big picture and then drill down. And the recommendation engine is also provisioned on the web, as well as places where your activities are centered. We need to be where the enterprise is at. So the recommendation engine can be used in Slack as a Chrome extension in a browser, or if you want to build your own plugin or an assistant on other form factors, it's super simple to do that. So you're there where people are at, so you're not trying to force a new product into their hands, but just plug into their workflow systems. Right. Lastly, just want to say that we try to find value as quickly as you can. In enterprises, the sales cycles are long, but if you can bring in value through quick use cases that they can try, that's why we have a lot of this open source, open corpus data. What we do is we take the customer's public data, and when we get on calls, we show them their own data. We let them ask questions on their own data. The familiarity with their own product gives them confidence that what we are doing makes sense. And that gets you the next call to do the POC and then hopefully go for a sales deal. Right. So very short and brief thing. I'd rather answer questions here so that I wanted to frame what we are doing. We are an AI ML company with a very deep technology team. We do deal with LLMs. We have used OpenAI. We got access to Anthropic's Claude. We are now with Llama being released with commercial license last week. We are now trying to do that in parallel so we can handle anything. We have a framework to handle any LLMs. We are not too sold on LangChain. To be very clear, it's a little clunky. Vector databases are nice, and we picked one that works for us. If you go to our blog site, we have given our opinion on where LLMs are headed, what's the hype, what's reality, how to choose a vector database, how to look at LLM chaining and tools, and so on and so forth. Some of our products also use GPT-4. For an early stage startup, using OpenAI is good in terms of your spend. Otherwise, as I think someone mentioned, trying to hunt for GPUs and trying to make it work is capital intensive. It won't give you bang for the buck unless your customer is willing to pay a lot. 2 or 3 issues we have found with customers when we do work with them is not everybody is a fan of OpenAI because it's owned by Microsoft, 49%. Second is the cost. It's pretty expensive if you look at scale. Third is latency. You wouldn't want your users to wait for 40 seconds to get an answer that they're not happy with. You'd rather be fast and if you're off, rather being slow and right after a very long time. So if you're hosting your own open source models, you can be cost effective, latencies are extremely good, and you have control on your data sets. Other thing, on terms of data privacy, I saw a few questions on the Zoom chat and also brought on the panel. There is a difference between using ChatGPT, the product, and OpenAI's APIs. If you send data to OpenAI's APIs, you have all the guarantees around security and privacy. They do not use the data for training. They remove it after 30 days and mostly use it for operational purposes for monitoring if the model is working or not. So there's a lot of confusion in enterprises around ChatGPT versus using the OpenAI's APIs. So that confusion will probably subside over the next couple quarters, maybe 3 quarters. A lot of the enterprises that we deal with want to use generative AI and LLMs, but they do not know how. They're still in the strategizing phase. They're excited. In reality, they are not as well informed in terms of charting a course. If you're clear on what problems need to be solved, a generative AI or LLM model can be a good tool, but you shouldn't go ahead thinking that generative AI is the solution to your problem. So that's a very, I would say, wrong way of looking at what you want to do with AI.
Thank you so much, Santosh. Great presentation. And we have time for one question from the audience, if there is one. Otherwise, you can always reach out and we make the connection afterwards. We are very popular for doing so. And we are making always the efforts, and the connections actually are going to happen. If there's no question, please stop the share. We're coming on to our 2 next presenters in the following sequence. We have Ray from Kindi. That is actually a Tim company, and I will give Tim.
Ryan Welsh.
Ryan. I will give Tim the honors to introduce them, and that's followed by Michael from GunSense. And we have basically now a total of 20 minutes for both companies. So because the San Jose State University is butting right against us. So Tim, introduce your own portfolio company.
Well, I'll do it real fast. Ryan is absolutely awesome. It is so fun to coach him. He's got the big 3 that I look for in founders: smarts, goodness, and grit. Couldn't be happier to be in business with him. So I'll let him take it away.
Okay, please.
Thank you, Tim. And there's nothing more nerve-wracking than doing a pitch in front of one of your investors. So it's quite rare, but always happy to do it. And so my name is Ryan Welsh. I'm the founder and CEO of Kindi. Let me jump into the deck here, and so everyone can see my deck. Perfect.
You're perfectly fine. Take it away.
So we're a generative AI answer engine for enterprises, and so I like to think about ChatGPT as disrupting consumer search. My wife was actually planning a trip for her 40th birthday recently, and she used ChatGPT for the first time, where she asked for an itinerary through Croatia and Italy and France, and it spit back an answer for her with different cities that she should visit on different days. And she turns to me and she says, "I'm never using Google again." And that's a crazy statement, considering that Google's one of the greatest software engineering organizations in the history of the world and one of the greatest cash machines in the history of the world. And so just in the last 6 months, we see a technology that can completely disrupt everything. And so the user experience of machines now is the ability to ask specific questions and get answers. And so I believe in the enterprise space that every search bar and every chat interface in every enterprise in the world is going to have an answer engine behind it in the next 10 years. Majority of search engines are going to be ripped out. Now, the unfortunate challenge with large language models, and Santosh was just talking about this, is these systems generate false answers consistently. And so just putting in a chat GPT, you're going to have challenges in the enterprise. They're also uncontrollable black boxes. You actually don't know where these answers are going to come from in the underlying data. Also, these systems take a lot of time, money, and resources to fine tune to understand domain specific content. And so while these language models have good understanding of general English and general language, when you start getting into pharma, financial services, manufacturing, Department of Defense, stuff like that, you start using words differently and these systems really start to struggle. And now you're stuck in this fine tuning cycle, which can take a very long time and a lot of money. And so what we've built here at Kindy, and candidly what we've been focused on building for the last several years, is kind of the two main components of an answer engine: the language model itself, but then also what's being called the external memory for these language models. And so a Kindy system generates accurate answers from trusted enterprise data sources. These answers are explainable. We can actually show you which words and which sentences are being used to generate the answer. And it's cost effective to tune and optimize to understand domain specific content. And so with a pharma customer, actually prospect rather, that we just finished a pilot with, they had 6 PhDs that were fine tuning a language model over 6 months for a question answering system. And they weren't able to get it above a level of competency to go live. With our system, it took 2 days. And so just the significant speed ups in tuning a model to understand domain specific content. And so, as I shared earlier, I personally believe that answer engines creates one of the largest opportunities in the history of software. And so I like to kind of start the search engine era back with the release of kind of IBM's information retrieval or enterprise search system back in 1970. And so for the last 52 years, we're talking about search engine dominance and trillions of dollars of market cap. And then on November 30th, 2022, the release of ChatGPT, that era may have ended. I mean, that's crazy to think about. And this is the weird slide to put together to think that the search engine era is over. Now, when I was selling this software that about a year ago, I would walk into an enterprise and I would talk to specifically people within the customer experience space, whether it's marketing or operations or customer support. And I would tell them that they could use our system to enable their users to ask natural language questions and get answers. They would look at me and say, Ryan, I have a search engine. And so I used to have to evangelize this category. Now, everyone understands. It's fascinating to see what ChatGPT has done in the last 6 months. And so I like to say that it's done a decade's worth of category evangelism in 6 months. And now a company like ours that has a working product in market is able to take advantage of all that category evangelism. And so what's interesting about how this market's coming together is if you want to build an answer engine today, you have to cobble it together yourself. And so, someone like Santosh, who is clearly a competent technical leader, was able to cobble together, the language model, the vector databases. He wrote a blog on choosing vector databases and using LangChain to orchestrate potentially and kind of putting all this together. What I find interesting about this space is comparing it to the search engine space. When you want to purchase a search engine, do you go purchase the tokenizer, the index, the database, and the UI, or do you buy a search engine? You buy a search engine. Why can you not buy an answer engine today? And so what we've done at Kindy is we've coupled all these things together into a fully integrated end-to-end system for the enterprise. And so deploying this purple rectangle that you see on the right here on a website is literally dropping in 3 lines of code, and you have an answer engine. Super, super simple. And let me actually show you what that would provide to you if you just drop in those 3 lines of code. And so I'm going to show you the Apple website. And so Apple's not a customer, but we pulled all the Apple data down just because it's super easy to see how someone could query data like this. And so if I were to come to the Apple site and I would to ask a question of the Apple site, like, how long is the base warranty coverage for Apple products? This is the typical user experience you get with search engines. So you type in the question, you get a list of results. I see this top one is pretty relevant. I click on it. I go here. I choose the product that I'm on. I'm on a MacBook. I actually got a MacBook Pro here. I see a link. Let me click there. That's not my answer. I'm in the United States. Let me go there. Boom, there you go. So about several clicks, bunch of navigation, one wrong navigation. I finally got to my answer. I've done this demo hundreds of times, so I know where I'm going. Imagine if you didn't know where you were going. And so with the Kindy system, and this is just a widget UI, it obviously can be stylized to any person's website or internal application. You come in and you ask a question like, what are the base warranty coverage for Apple products? Boom, you get an answer to your question. And so it talks about iPhone, MacBook, Apple TV, you get 1 year hardware repair coverage. That's the answer to the question. And so I personally believe that generative AI just transforms this entire experience. And so on Apple site, which is, you know, the most profitable company in the history of the world and some of the most accomplished software engineers, I had to click 4, 5, 6 times to get to my answer. Well, now I can just ask a specific question and get an answer to my question. And with the Kindy system, we can actually show you where these answers are coming from in the underlying content. And so if you want to see for yourself, you see how long is actually lining up with things like 90 days. You can go back to the underlying site and see for yourself where the answer is and to confirm for yourself. And so I personally believe that this just kind of transforms everything, especially when you consider that employees today spend about 20% of their time looking for answers to their questions. And so it's just fascinating the productivity gains that you can get from an answer engine. We can go back to the deck, and I'll finish up here shortly. I think what's unique about pulling all these things together, you'll see that we use third-party large language models today in that blue rectangle. But by actually owning the user experience, we're capturing feedback through the UI now, and we're fine-tuning language models that we can use for very specific targeted industries. And so we believe that we can actually build a enterprise large language model company on a fraction of the investment capital, because we don't have to build these things from scratch. And so if you're a vector database company, you don't own the user interface. If I'm abstracting you from an LLM perspective, I own the user interface. And so I'm actually gathering that human feedback. And you can start to build more specialized domain-specific LLMs that you can use to substitute out the third-party LLMs that people are using today. We have use cases within pharma. This is just a similar use case to what I was just talking about on the Apple site. Pharma companies have drug microsites where people want to ask questions. Dropping Kindy in is about 3 lines of code again, and anything turns into an answer engine. We manage that entire process of language model, vector database, all of that. From a competition perspective, I like to show that we're the only one that really checks all the boxes for the enterprise. And so you want to answer questions directly. You don't want to provide a list of search results. You want to have contextual understanding of domain-specific content. You don't want to have any hallucinations. And so our system, via that retrieve augmented generation model, doesn't have any of those hallucinations. You want to understand industry-specific language. You're able to do that with Kindy. And you want to have that explainability. You want to know that these are trusted answers or accurate answers from trusted enterprise content. And you want to see where those words are coming from in the underlying content. Team that I put together here, my CTO has built multiple NLP companies, venture-backed NLP companies. John, Mark, our head of product, used to run software engineering down at Apple. We're his ninth startup. His third NLP company, one of which he sold to Nuance, which was ultimately acquired by Microsoft. And then John Reuter, our CRO, joined us last June from Landing AI. I was able to coach him from Landing, which is Andrew Ng's AI startup. We are actually about 4 weeks into a fundraise. We're raising 10 million. 10 million gets us to profitability and the ability to grow 2-3x after that. Intel Capital is an investor and on our board. Obviously, Tim Connors, who's on the call, and the third board member on our board is Jen Grange, just a phenomenal independent, previously CMO over at Looker and Elastic. And so I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And actually, I can tell you that Amazon needs to put your technology into their own website, because I can never find anything on Amazon. I have to go to Google to find something on Amazon. So there should be lots of room of improvement there. And great for your presentation. I think we are going now over to Michael from GunSense.
Okay.
And Michael, are you ready?
I am.
Okay. Please be mindful of the time, because the students of Somerset State University Startup Accelerator are staying in line to be next to be coached. So, and I have the obligation to them as well. So please take it away from here.
Okay, I'll try to blast through it. Thank you for the time today. Great panel. Appreciate it. So GunSense, we are a threat detection platform, and we are preventing loss of life. So saving lives from gun violence is our first product launch. I'll run through this. So everybody knows about the violent crimes, mass shootings. We don't have to belabor that point. The founders of this company, we're a team of 6 serial entrepreneurs. Peter Redford, our chairman and CEO, heads it up. He has half a dozen or more successful exits, more than 40 patents, including autoplay and airplay. Dr. Greg Sansier, our chief safety officer, comes with 32 years of SWAT hostage negotiation. He's also a PhD in clinical and psychology. So he's an integral part of our team. The rest of the team, you can obviously see from the slides. I don't think I have time to run through all of them, but we are all serial entrepreneurs with several exits between us. So the legacy competitors are out there, 25 years old, ripe for disruption. They basically are audio-based. They're looking for the detection of shots once they're fired. Obviously, you know, that's too late. So what we do is we have an AI neural network, vision-based, fully autonomous IoT edge-based unit. The device is looking for the presence of a gun. It doesn't violate privacy and Second Amendment rights. So how does the system work? Well, once it detects it with about a 98.2% accuracy rate, it sends a signal through FirstNet, which is a government mandated program that guarantees low latency. It is only available for first responders. We are the only threat detection platform that's been authorized to use it. Along with that, we send that out longitude, latitude, and z-axis data to first responders. At the same time, we will send out an alert that looks like an Amber Alert to general public and to first responders. It includes a floor plan and a map of the threat location and its travel. You can see here, there's a typical classroom. The red symbol in the restroom is where the shooter started his process. FBI data tells us he may be there for anywhere from 1 minute to 18 minutes. And because we don't violate privacy, we're only looking for the presence of a gun, and we only have to see a small portion of it. We can actually put those sensors in the bathrooms. This is the current location. So SWAT team shows up. They know exactly where to go and who the perpetrator is. It's over before it begins. We do have legacy product out there, obviously the ShotSpotters of the world and Eagle Eye. We've already talked about a lot of that. We have Zero Eyes and Athena and several other video agencies out there. Their problem is that they require installed CCTV cameras. They're expensive. They require cloud, and they have to send video data up to the cloud for somebody actually to visually tell you there's a threat or not a threat. So it takes way too much time. So it's a preemptive shooting threat detection using autonomous AI. We have about a dozen different patents that are pending and in process. We're accepting orders right now. We do have traction with several schools down in the Los Angeles area. We have Fortune 100 companies that we're in negotiations with for several tens of thousands of units. We're in negotiations to close contracts with AT&T for distribution. T-Mobile is already closed. TD SYNNEX is our global distribution partner. They're a $72 billion IT infrastructure company, and they will be distributing globally for us. We're closing negotiations with Verizon and Motorola Security Systems as well. So the unit is incredibly inexpensive in comparison to everybody else. $599 per unit, $20 SaaS subscription per month per detector. Target markets today, retail stores, which we have dozens of, commercial buildings, places of worship, which we have dozens of, schools and households. The roadmap also includes about a dozen different verticals from consumer all the way up to military, including mobile and wearable devices. So the projections that we're looking at today, about $10 million in revenue first year. That's very conservative. We have one Fortune 100 company who's a global infrastructure company who wants 90,000 units. That obviously will blow it out of the water. But we're projecting very conservatively about $98 to $100 million by year 3. TAM is 98 billion. SAM is 24.5. The SAM, we're only projecting about 0.4% of market share. That's 100 million. We're realistically looking at closing a couple of large contracts would put us about 8% of market share, and we're getting close to a $1 billion company at that point. The ask is 5 million, manufacturing and rapid scale, team expansion, market deployment. We own our own AI. We have a very unique AI programming step that allows us to program very quickly indeed. We've been invited by the DHS to Washington, D.C. to present in front of several panels. Liability, we are in pending with the DHS Safety Act for liability inclusion. So the acquisition, we're already talking to many of our acquisition partners, telcos, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, equipment manufacturers like Motorola. Expected market valuation, this is just with the initial focus of gun threats. Obviously, we're a threat detection platform and can include any sensors we want at a later stage. But early investors would see at least a 10x and $1 billion exit plus. And hopefully I steamed through that as quickly as I could.
Thank you so much for your great presentation. What we are actually very happy at Pitch Global about is that we see from our companies, from the first pitch to progressive pitches, how the quality of the pitches are actually increasing. And I'm very happy about your progress. And at this point in time, if you stop the share, this actually concludes our first AI-oriented, is it ready for enterprise? Deborah, such a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to doing so many more with you. And because we were together in March and you were my interview guest. And,
that's right.
And now you are the resident EIR for CVC. This was a great first event. It can only get better. And we know there is many questions left to the topic. So we will not run out of topics. And thank you again. Thank you for the audience. And those who are already in the Zoom room from San Jose State University, where we're now starting the mentorship program, Please stay online because the Zoom will continue from now on. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. And thank you for the panel. Thank you.